Hi, I'm Emma Edwards, and I'm here with a special bonus episode of So What, the podcast that questions everything you thought you knew about energy. I'm back today to talk about the one thing that affects all of us, the price we pay for energy. The Australian Energy Regulator and the Essential Services Commission in Victoria have both recently announced their final changes to their respective default offers that will take effect on 1 July. And many energy retailers will soon start communicating their own changes to energy prices for their customers. But for most of us, understanding energy prices is probably in the too hard basket. And with good reason. AER, ESC, default offers, what does all of it mean? I mean, I just want to have confidence that I'm getting good value and a good price for my energy. But there is a cost to not understanding what you're paying for and to not comparing plans and providers and doing your homework. So here with me today to help unpack all of this in terms we can actually understand and provide us with some advice on what we can do to take control of our energy use and bills is the head of retail at Origin, Jon Briskin. He's got a big job looking after 4.7 million customers, so I'm hopeful that he'll have the answers we're looking for. Welcome to So What, Jon Briskin.
Hello.
So tell me a bit, first of all, about your role and what you do at Origin. What does it mean to be head of retail?
Yeah, well, I've got the great privilege of working for Origin, who supply now 4.7 million customers with electricity, gas, or their internet needs. And so the privilege for me is to look after the team that are there every day trying to make energy decisions more affordable and easier for our customers.
So hopefully you're going to be the one with the answers today.
I hope so.
Let's jump right into those answers. I don't think I'm alone in thinking that energy bills can be quite confusing. Can you tell us exactly what goes into an energy bill? What am I paying for and what am I looking at?
Yeah, Emma, it's quite simply two parts. The first is how much energy you use. And the second bit is the cost of generating and sending that energy to your house. Just in terms of how much you use, I saw something the other day which said 70% of Australians don't actually have confidence knowing what a kilowatt hour is or really what the unit of energy is. So the simplest way to think about this is that a 100-watt light bulb uses 100 watts of energy in 1 hour. So in about 10 hours, it uses a kilowatt. And kilowatts are what we measure the price of energy. On the flip side, if you're using a dryer, you'll use that kilowatt within about 15 or 20 minutes. So you can tell dryers are an expensive source of energy. So how much you use and then the cost to supply that energy. And that cost is made up of producing the energy. So that's our wind, our solar, our gas, hydro or coal generators. And that's about 40% of your bill. The other part of the cost is actually taking it from those power stations to your home, our network costs, and they also make up around 40% of the bill. There's government green schemes that are part of the bill, around 5 to 7%. And then there's the retailer costs and margins. And the retailers are the ones which buy the energy on your behalf and then sell it to you, and then they pass through those costs of the network charges. That's probably around 15% of the bill.
Okay, so we can see that it looks like energy prices are going to go up for a lot of people again this year. And that can be by varying amounts depending on where they live. Why is this happening and why is that amount varying?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it does vary by where you live. There are places like Southeast Queensland or even South Australia where the network charges that make up a big proportion of the bill aren't rising by as much, and some of the other states they are. And so what we've seen over the last 12 months is, and to use the words of the energy regulator, sustained pressure across almost all components of the default market offer, the price of your energy. So the networks do make up a good proportion of costs. Those networks need to continue to be maintained and built out, especially as we have more renewable energy built into them. So that's part of the increase. The other part is that wholesale cost to produce the energy has also gone up. There's times when it's very hot that the prices do rise, and part of that gets passed through into the energy costs. And then the final one is the retailer costs. We have also had cost increases through inflation, but also we've also seen more customers struggling to pay their bill, and that actually becomes quite a significant cost item on a retailer's cost stack.
I know we're going to talk a bit more about that financial difficulty component later. So if people have got questions about that, we will come back around to it. I want to get into the kind of things that people might be hearing when these changes are talked about either online or in the media or in the news. The DMO and the VDO, the default market offer and the Victorian default offer. Can you explain what these are and maybe how they interact with price changes in terms of energy?
So the default market offer and the Victorian default offer are offers that are set by the energy regulator, and they effectively act as a safety net for customers that are on what we call standing electricity offers. Standing electricity offers are about 10% of customers, and they're typically customers that haven't changed their energy offer for many, many, many years. For the 90% of customers that are on what we call a market offer, the DMO and the VDO act as a reference price, a bit the same way that your interest rates on your mortgage are compared between different mortgages. So what you'll see out there is that someone may be 5% less or 10% less, or in fact, they may even be more than the default market offer or the Victorian default offer, which is why it pays to always shop around.
Okay, brilliant. So those offers are they baked into comparison tools and things like that?
Yeah, the easiest way to compare is actually to go onto the government comparison website. Yep. So both Victorian and the AER have those websites. Put in your details and you'll see where your offer stacks up.
So we've seen kind of a lot of price rises, not just in energy, across all kind of categories over the last few years. When can we expect some stabilization? Or can we expect them to get cheaper? You know, a question that a lot of people have is that the government says that renewables are the cheapest form of energy, but we're using them more and prices are going up and not down. What's happening with that? Is that going to change? Can we expect to see a different trend in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges that we've got right now is we're actually rebuilding our energy system while continuing to support the old system, and that adds costs. What we see over the longer term, though, is as we start to retire some of the coal-fired power stations, as the energy market transitions, we see that solar and wind, supported by batteries and firmed up by gas, are likely to be the cheaper source of energy. So over time, we should see that improvement. We have this period now while we're building the new system that we see prices increase.
Let's talk about being a customer wanting to get a good deal on my energy and make sure I'm not paying too much. Maybe people have been listening to season 3 of So What or this episode and they want to get across their energy because it's previously been in the too hard basket. How do I know that I'm getting a good deal and how can I make sure I'm not paying too much?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is actually look on your bill and check what plan you're on. And on your bill, it's going to tell you whether you can save on a different plan. The second thing you should do is go to the government comparison websites. They're independent websites and they'll tell you whether there's better offers available for you. And the third is simply making sure that the concessions that you may be entitled to are actually applied to your bill. So please check them. And if you're unsure about any of those, contact your energy retailer.
Do you have an example of what one of those concessions might be?
Yeah, each state has a number of different concessions. So you may be entitled to like one-off larger grants where they help pay down some of the debt, or else there are some of the concessions that are based on your usage and can reduce that cost for you.
I feel like something that's worth talking about when it comes to energy bills, obviously the price of it is a big factor. But something I often get people to do is think about the behavior and their organization around paying those bills. Because, you know, sometimes when we're using a lot of air conditioning or heating, there can be like big spikes in bills at certain times of the year. I think something people often don't realize they can do is contact their energy provider and ask to pay like a streamlined or a smoothed amount monthly. Is that something that you recommend for people, or are there any other tools maybe that Origin has to help people manage their bills outside of just the price of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best things you can do is just put some money aside through either a weekly or a fortnightly or a monthly payment plan. And what we find is that a number of customers do that. They keep ahead, and therefore when they do get the bill, there's not the surprise. Everything's sort of been accounted for there.
Yeah, what I hear from a lot of people that do bill smoothing, or they're putting money aside to build up towards their bills and things, it just takes the mental load out of it. It takes that guesswork out of, oh, what's my bill going to be? Or like, oh, we've run the heater a lot. So I think aside from it being really savvy in a financial sense, it actually just takes something off of your to-do list, and you know that that's being set aside, and it makes your whole budgeting system so much easier. You know what your rent is going to be each month. Ideally, you know what your mortgage is going to roughly be each month, and you can do the same thing with your energy as well.
Exactly. I also think that there's a great idea to look at at your app, and most of the retailers have apps. There's the Origin app for our customers, and that can actually track your energy use by the hour. I was actually away with the family the other weekend, and my sister came and stayed at our house. And I saw on the app that something had gone bizarrely wrong. And when I came back, the heating was on full wall and 2 or 3 of the windows were open. So,
oh, no.
So lucky I picked that up on the app and didn't run a whole month with that. So that's good.
And nothing like energy when you're not paying for it.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Thank you very much, Nicole. The other one I'd just recommend is that people can really save through rewards programs. Something which you typically will see with retailers is they'll either have airline rewards, or they'll have, in the case of Origin, our everyday rewards with Woolworths, discounted petrol. You can get cheaper movie tickets, your coffees at 7-Eleven, Paramount Plus when you bundle broadband. They're actually really great ideas to save. And then the final thing I know, which is probably more long-term for a number of customers, but they are thinking about home electrification and how you perhaps either solar or supplement solar with a battery, now that there's government rebates on the battery as well. They can certainly help save energy over time.
Yeah, amazing. So those bigger kind of upfront investments, but they're going to cost you less in the long run.
Exactly.
And another tip I like to remind people of is, if your payment date for your utilities isn't when you want it, call and ask to change it. So many people tell me that their bills or their rent or whatever is due the day before payday. And I'm like, you can change that. Just move it over. And it makes it so much easier. As I said earlier about the money mental load, so much easier to manage if it's on a day that works for you. We touched on earlier this kind of element of customers experiencing hardship, and they can't necessarily make their energy bill payments on time or at all. If customers are experiencing hardship, because we're seeing it across the board in so many ways, what can customers do who simply cannot pay their energy bills? Are there any hardship schemes that people might not be aware of? Is there anything that you wish people knew about financial difficulty and energy bills?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that if you're struggling to pay your energy bill, the first and best step is to let your retailer know. Every single retailer must have a hardship program, and that is simply there to help you be able to pay your bills. At Origin, we've got a program called Power On, and we help a number of customers with access to support like flexible payment arrangements. We can defer some of their debt to when they can pay it. We can even give them access to financial counselling service. Certainly energy efficiency advice is a big one. And as I mentioned earlier, grants and concessions, and make sure that customers have got those as well. We, I think over the past 3 years, have spent something close to $120 million supporting customers that are experiencing hardship. And we're going to spend another substantial amount of money over the next 12 months to continue to provide support to those that need it. So for us, it's a key area that we want to make sure that everybody has access to energy as an essential service, and we're there to support our customers.
That's really good to hear. So, Jon, you've shared so much advice with us today, and I'm sure listeners like me are feeling much more informed about their energy. Have you got any parting wisdom or advice or hacks to share with us before we wrap up?
There are so many resources available. I think one of the best things to do is actually go online, go to your company website. I know within Origin, we've got lots of tips. We got through the Origin blog. You can get energy insights using the Origin app. Make sure that your concessions on your bill, you're comparing your bill. And the So What podcast is such a fantastic resource to find ways to save.
If we do say so ourselves, it is a great podcast. And I think one thing I've learned from hosting this season is that there are small things that you can do that add up to a big difference. All of those things, like the star rating of your appliances, or how much heat is being held within your home, or how much cooling is being held within your home. it's all things that you actually can take control of. And I think through the tips that we've shared and the tips that I've learned through hosting, I'm much more empowered and informed about my energy, and hopefully listeners are too. Jon, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everybody for listening. So What is the show that questions everything you thought you knew about energy, and it's brought to you by Origin. If you'd like to find out more about what we spoke about with Jon today, I've left a link to Origin's blog post in the show notes of this episode. This was a slightly different format for our episodes, so we'd love to hear what you think, and any suggestions for topics that you want to hear more about or interview subjects that you would like to hear from, let us know. Send your suggestions through to media@originenergy.com.au. If you enjoyed this chat, make sure you're caught up with our other episodes from season 3, or just hit follow in the podcast app you're in right now. And don't forget to rate and review us too. It helps more people find the show. Thanks again for listening.